Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. I am Bryson Carver. We've got another good one for you guys today. I'm telling you, I'm glad I took last week off, because if I had done shows last week and taken this week off, I don't know, man. I'd have never forgiven myself, because this week in sports has been nothing short of stories. There's no question about it. And there's a lot to get to today. So I'm going to talk about James Harden, his awful game against the Brooklyn Nets, and likewise Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Seth Curry dominating the Philadelphia 76ers last night. I'll discuss Seth's older brother, the immortal Steph Curry, and his effort in helping my Warriors beat the Nuggets last night, as well as a multitude of other things. My man Alfred Parsard Jr., love having him on the show. He's going to join to discuss the baseball lockout, finally, after 4 months ending, and we'll discuss all that's going on in the sport and what's to look forward to in the future, and also discuss the Khalil Mack trade. And what it does is it's another addition, it's another example of a trend that is going on in the NFL that if you don't subscribe to, you're going to be left in the dust. I'll talk about that later in the show. But first, for the second straight show, we open with breaking news. This from Adam Schefter about an hour and a half before this show began. I'll put the tweet up here. I'll read it for the podcast audience. Simple as this, from Adam Schefter: Deshaun Watson will not face criminal charges. The second tweet from Adam Schefter says, quote, "This is why Deshaun Watson, from the beginning, welcomed a police investigation. He felt that he knew that the truth would come out. And today, a grand jury did not charge him of any of the criminal complaints." And Deshaun Watson himself weighed in just about 15 minutes ago. So this is fairly recent. Deshaun Watson tweeted, quote, "When you stand on the truth, the Lord will free you." So Deshaun Watson obviously very elated at the ruling that the jury made. So obviously, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not going to try to play one here on this podcast or on this live stream whatsoever. My takeaway on it is this. I'll get to sort of the trade market and everything, because there's a lot to discuss there. Because as Adam Schefter would later point out, and there's no question about this, Deshaun Watson's trade value just skyrocketed, because now everybody knows where the legal situation is at. What I will tell you is exactly what I've told you in the last year. First of all, from the legal standpoint, all I will give you is this. When there was all the speculation and this and that and this and that, I said, okay, I'm going to rely on, I forgot the guy's name. I think he might have worked for CBS Sports. I forgot his name. But he said something along the lines of, if you're looking for the Deshaun Watson situation to end soon, then give that up, because it is not going to be resolved in 2021, but in 2022. And he was obviously right. So that's something I harked back on all throughout this past year. And then secondly is something that I said. When these allegations broke a year ago, a total of 22 civil lawsuits, and I believe 9 were pushed criminal charges against Deshaun Watson. My takeaway on it is this. I said, look, the justice system's got to do what the justice system's got to do. You got to conduct the investigation, let the investigation play out as it may. But from my perspective, as a sports fan, as somebody who follows especially the superstar athletes very closely, not a reporter, not a journalist, simply a fan, I said, if it comes out to be true that Deshaun Watson did in fact do these things, I would have been stunned. Because Deshaun Watson is a guy who has been unbelievable in the Houston community. He's not going to be in the Houston community a whole lot longer. He's going to get traded soon, as he's been requesting as of late. But the one thing I did say that was a little fishy going back to last year, I said, look, we all know Houston is a poorly run franchise. We know the owner, the comments the late owner, Mr. McNair, made about 5 years ago about, was it the inmates running the prison, talking about NFL players. So we know kind of where they stand on some of these star African-American players. And so Deshaun Watson asked for a trade around January, February, and then these allegations come out in March. Now, did they coincide with the organization? I don't think they did. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to subscribe to that. But what I will say is this. It's awfully interesting that they did come out around the same time. Houston was adamant. We're not going to trade Deshaun Watson. He probably won't be a Texan 48 hours from now. So I think all the stuff that's gone on the last year or so, I will say this much, and then I'll move on to the trade value. I hate the fact that a guy of Deshaun Watson's character, what it has proven to be, that he had to deal with this. I'll leave it at that. Moving on to his trade value. Obviously, as I mentioned, as Mr. Schefter, number one insider in the NFL, as he mentioned, it just skyrocketed, no question, because now, again, they know where the legal situation is at. They know he will not face criminal charges. And for Deshaun Watson, we know what he represents. When you look at the fact that over the last, perhaps since he's been in Houston, he's had literally for a bag of chips, a second-round pick, and a backup running back. I mean, it was unbelievable. But Deshaun Watson, he played 7 games his rookie NFL season. He got hurt. Since then, 2018, 4,100 yards. He threw 26 touchdowns, 9 picks, had a passer rating of 103. Also, you look at the fact that going on from there, you look at 2019. 3,800 yards, 26 touchdowns, went up 12 picks, or went up to 12 picks, 98 passer rating. And then in 2020, again, I want to reiterate, with no offensive line, with nothing to help him defensively, with a decent receiving core in Houston, but again, no DeAndre Hopkins and no running game. Deshaun Watson, 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, only 7 picks, a passer rating of 112. This dude's a franchise changer. He's in that Russell Wilson category. Like, it's crazy. These two guys have wanted out of their organizations for a while now. We've known that. It's been fairly public for about a year now. And both have no trade clauses. Russell Wilson said, I'm going to Denver. Right? The Seahawks had the deal in place with the Broncos. It needed Russell Wilson's approval. He approved. Russell Wilson's a Denver Bronco today. Deshaun Watson has the exact same thing in his contract. And so he's going to get to go where he wants to go, depending on where the Texans, who they're going to do the deal with. We know that. But this guy, without a shadow of a doubt, is a franchise changer. We're talking about a guy with a big arm. Completion percentage has been really good. It's actually, matter of fact, his completion percentage has been steady, and as a matter of fact, has gone up. So his rookie year, it's only about 62%. Okay, you want to improve from that. And he did. He went up to 68%. Then he dropped a tick to 67%. And in 2020, he had a 70% completion percentage. I want to reiterate, with no offensive line and no number one receiver and no running game to help him out just a little bit to take to try and take the top off the defense. That's what Deshaun Watson's capable of. In a poorly run organization like Russell Wilson, they hadn't done him any favors in Seattle with the roster and how they drafted. But Seattle's a well-run organization, okay? Pete Carroll, I've had my many criticisms of him for the last year, but he's a good coach. He's not a great coach anymore. He's a good coach, though. John Schneider's a good general manager. Now, the ownership is kind of in flux after the passing of Paul Allen a few years ago, but I'm sure they'll get that straightened up as well because, again, Seattle's a well-run franchise. Houston is not. Houston is horribly run. And so I think there's a number of suitors. You look at teams like possibly the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that I think is just like Denver, a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl contender. Because you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, we're talking about Najee Harris, who was the best rookie running back in football last year. I thought he should have been a Rookie of the Year finalist over Mac Jones. I thought he was better than Mac Jones. Receiving core, does anybody draft receivers better than Pittsburgh? Okay, Deontay Johnson, I think, can be really good in this league. He's had a bad case of the drops at times, but he's an exceptional route runner. He's quick. He could be used in with Deshaun Watson. I mean, Deshaun Watson made this one guy KDQT work. I mean, who's that? Like, no disrespect to Mr. QT, but that's not going to win you a ton of games. So for him to get a guy like in Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster's probably going to be moved on from. You got that Freiermuth tight end who showed some real flashes last year with Big Ben, with an old, immobile arm that is shot, Big Ben, okay? So you got a security blanket at tight end. An excellent offensive line. Defensively, you got TJ Watt. You've got Minkah Fitzpatrick. You got some ball. Cam Hayward. You got some dudes on that Pittsburgh Steelers defense. I think the fit works. I think the fit works in Pittsburgh. You got other teams like possibly the Giants. The Philadelphia Eagles certainly have the draft picks in order to move to Houston. They would probably trade Jalen Hurts as well. I think that would be an interesting dynamic. Jalen Hurts versus, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the guy's name, the quarterback out of Stanford that plays for the Texans. Oh my God. Davis Mills versus Jalen Hurts. It's an interesting competition without a question. But when I look at Deshaun possibly going to Pittsburgh, a first-class organization with a first-class ownership and a first-class head coach with a great defense and really good skill position players, and he gets a running game? Is he going to a tougher division? No question about it. No question about it. You know, he's got to play Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and a really good Cleveland roster twice a year. That's no joke. Okay, you don't get to play, the Jaguars twice a year. But just like what I said about Russell Wilson, this is an elite quarterback going to a great division. He'll be fine. Okay? So for Deshaun Watson, I think Pittsburgh would be a perfect fit. And honestly, regardless of where he's traded, I think by Monday's show, all of us, myself included, will be talking about Deshaun Watson's next destination because I think a trade will be done between now and then. So this is an interesting dynamic. Good for Deshaun Watson in the legal situation, and I think his football life is about to get a lot better. Giants possibly. They have a ton of cap space. They got Brian Dable, obviously. We know Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback. Like Daniel Jones, don't love him. I think he's a solid starter, but he's not a franchise quarterback. He's not taking the Giants anywhere. Deshaun Watson to the Giants, they could contend for a playoff spot. Now, I think if he's got a better chance at, possibly beating the Dallas Cowboys for the division if he goes to Philadelphia than he does the Giants. But if he goes to the Giants, now we're talking about that last wild card spot in the NFC, which I've talked about for the last couple of days now. I said right now I would say it's a battle between the Washington Commanders and the Minnesota Vikings. Well, now, if Deshaun gets traded to the Giants, they're not winning the NFC East, but I think we could very well be talking about Minnesota, Washington, and the Giants. It's not a great roster, but Deshaun didn't exactly have great rosters in Houston, and he will get a slight upgrade at offensive line and a massive upgrade at head coach because I think Brian Dable is going to work. So, this is going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. But, I think there's some other teams. People have suggested Seattle. My man John, we were texting about it. He suggested Seattle. I think for the Seahawks here, I've been clear about this since Russell Wilson was traded. I think they're in rebuild mode. They let go of Bobby Wagner. They need draft picks. I think Pete Carroll's going to retire after this season, and then they're just going to kind of go in a different direction. But he made the point to me, Pete Carroll wants to reboot, not rebuild. Well, absolutely. Yeah, Pete Carroll is over the age of 70, over the age of 70, although, by his energy, you wouldn't know it. He's got the energy of a 40-year-old. But, Pete Carroll, I get that. He does want to win now. The problem is Seattle's roster, even with a Deshaun Watson, is not ready to win now. Heck, they went 7-10 with Russell Wilson playing all but 3 games. So I don't know if Seattle's necessarily a realistic fit for Deshaun Watson. So, because I think at the end of the day, Seattle's in rebuild mode. But I think Pittsburgh's the best spot. Pittsburgh may have to give up like a defensive starter, kind of like the Broncos did. They may have to give up, Freiermuth, who I think can be a really good tight end in this league. I think he showed some flashes in his rookie season. And certainly they'll have to give up a ton of draft picks. But it's kind of the trend in the NFL is going. I'm going to talk about Khalil Mack later in the show. As the NFL trend has been going, does anybody remember who, the Jaguars took with the picks that they got from the Rams for Jalen Ramsey? No, we remember that Jalen Ramsey, although he didn't play a very good Super Bowl, that Jalen Ramsey has been a great fit with the Los Angeles Rams. Do we remember what Of course, I don't know if all of those picks have been, I don't know if all of them have been selected, but are we going to remember who the Detroit Lions take with the picks that the Rams gave them for Matthew Stafford? No, we're going to remember Matthew Stafford holding the Lombardi Trophy, hugging his family. That's what we're going to remember. We're not going to remember who the Lions draft, with all due respect to who those draft picks have been or will be. But at the end of the day, I think it works. I think it works. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. I mean, how about this? How does Washington feel today? How does Washington? Because they're John Jones suggests Carolina. See, I really liked Matt Rule when he was hired. It's not working the way I thought it was going to. They fired Joe Brady. Obviously, the thing with Sam Darnold didn't work at all. But I don't think. I think Deshaun wants to go to a team where he can win now. Now, Carolina has some weapons. Obviously, you got guys like DJ Moore, who's so underrated. It doesn't get enough, attention because the Panthers aren't winning a ton of games. They're not on national TV a lot. So, but they've got guys. Shaq Thompson defensively, I thought had a great season last year. Defensively, the Panthers are really good, and I believe they're trying to negotiate a deal to bring Stephon Gilmore back. So the Panthers got some pieces, and they'll absolutely have to trade Christian McCaffrey, as all the rumors seem to suggest, to get Deshaun Watson. But I think from his perspective, he's kind of in a win now scenario. and as John just says, the point I was about to allude to, Washington's pissed. Absolutely. You try to get Russell Wilson. Reportedly, you had a king's ransom ready to try and go get Russ. Seahawks said no, or Russell said no, one of the two. And so you're like, okay, we'll go to the next best thing, I guess. We'll go get Carson Wentz. And now Deshaun Watson's available. Washington's going to be Washington, man. That's what they do. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I love to see that organization fail. Like I don't root for the failure of franchises and organizations, except for like a few, like Washington's one of them. Like I mean, the fact that like they should have changed the name. Okay. Like the original Washington team name sucked. But then they go to football team. Now they go to Commanders. You got the issue with the owner and all the drama that's going on with the sexual assault allegations, the investigation that's apparently still going on in the NFL, and it got John Gruden fired. You look at all this stuff. You got players fighting on the sideline because they're getting their behinds handed to them by the Dallas Cowboys. It's great. It really is. It really is. In case you haven't noticed, by the way, I'm wearing my Red Sox hat. Alfred Parsard Jr. is about to join the show live to discuss the baseball lockout. And, of course, I'm wearing my Tennessee basketball T-shirt because as we stand right now, my Vols are beginning their road to hopefully, I think, an Elite Eight. I'm going to put it down right here. The Tennessee Volunteers men's basketball team is going to make the Elite Eight. Something that we've done, I believe, only one time in program history. I think that was... See, Tobias Harris was on that team. So I'm going to guess it was 2009, maybe 2008, 2009, something like that. But it's been a minute for my Vols. But I think this is the best team that we've had, certainly under Rick Barnes in the last few years. So, but they're playing Mississippi State in the in the SEC tournament right now. But March Madness, definitely going to be discussing that a ton next week. You look at, Auburn got upset today by Texas A&M. So that's certainly going to end their bid, possibly getting a number one seed in the tournament. But it's going to be great. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to March Madness, and it is going to be absolute. It's going to be absolute insanity. It's already been insanity in some of these tournaments, but even moving forward from that, it's going to be fun. So as we heard yesterday, baseball's back. Actually, before we get that up. John just said, don't bring Harris up today. LOL. Yeah, man. Tobias Harris has really been awful all season long. That's my guy from Tennessee, but he's been terrible this season. But I'll discuss the James Harden and Philadelphia 76ers debacle against the Brooklyn Nets last night. But first, again, as we all know, baseball somewhat miraculously is back. And I'm excited. I know the next guest I'm about to have on is very excited. He is the host of the Metropolitan Report. He is... Alfred Parsard Jr. joining Carving It Up Live. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. I'm ecstatic if baseball is back, my friend. I have a lot to say about this, the lockout that was and the upcoming season. So I'm just in a good mood. Even turning back the clock with the retro Mets hat.
The black Mets hat. Yes, man. I love those. But no, I that's why I wanted to bring you on the show, because I know you've been a guy who's been very vocal about this stuff. So just first question, what was kind of your first initial reaction when you heard the news that that Major League Baseball was indeed ending its lockout and that they had come to an agreement?
I was actually very ecstatic about the news for two reasons. The first reason being, okay, like this is great, because I actually feared that there was going to be no season. As you know, the doofus commissioner Rob Manfred went on and said that he was going to cancel opening day, and me being a season ticket holder, I had a lot of strife with the Mets front office because they didn't want to give refunds; they just wanted to give credits towards next season's ticket package. And then I wanted 162 games. He said the first two series were canceled, but I was happy that we have a season and that there's going to be a full 162. Granted, there's going to be a lot of double headers, but I'll take it.
Hey, absolutely. I mean, if that's the worst case scenario, then that's, we'll, as baseball fans, we'll take that any day of the week. I think the players will take that any day of the week. But sort of, you sort of alluded to it with Commissioner Manfred, and my thing was this. I talked about this extensively on Monday's show, and we've discussed it, that a commissioner's, to me, I've always believed a commissioner has two jobs: maintain a good relationship between the Players Association and the owners. That's obviously, he's failed miserably at that.
Oh,
And
of
then
course.
secondly, market your product. Like the NFL, we know is the king of television, but Roger Goodell has taken it to a whole new level. Streaming, once the NFL embraced social media, we've seen where that's went, and things of that nature. Adam Silver's done a great job as well. I think even the WNBA commissioner has done a great job herself. Rob Manfred is absolutely behind the curb in a lot of things. So, sort of the future of baseball in your mind, do you think this is a wake-up call for the sport, or do you think we could see more of the same possibly in the next decade?
I hate to say something like this to this effect, but out of all the three major American sports, of course, I'm talking about the NBA basketball, NFL football, and MLB with baseball. Major League Baseball has declined in popularity more. The NFL and NBA have shot up, and MLB just keeps the scene declining. And I think Manfred is the wrong man at the helm for this type of thing. A lot of people don't remember this. And you and I were just you and I were just children. I don't know if you were born yet.
I was not.
No. So in the last lockout, Rob Manfred was actually the mediator between the two sides. And we saw what happened. There was no World Series in 94, and 95 started late. So Rob Manfred is always and then from the press conferences, he's always been a guy who sides with the owners. That's evident. He sounded so anti-player in all those press conferences he had after those failed meetings, and I don't think he's done a good job. I mean, I kind of predicted that they would have a lockout, because don't forget, in 2020 they had to do labor negotiations due to COVID.
Yes.
And they went from 100 games and got negotiated all the way down to 60. So Manfred, and I told you this yesterday in a text message conversation. I think that the best commissioner baseball has ever had is Bud Selig, and I feel like Manfred is he's not the right guy for the job. Too close-minded. I knew these negotiations were going to be tough because he was always so pro owner, and a lot of the things, like if you really been following it, a lot of the terms that the players were fighting for were things that the owners had a majority of a stranglehold on for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think so. And that was kind of going to be my next point. My next question to you is, who do you believe, when it was all said and done, once the agreement came to pass, who do you think won the negotiations? Do you believe it was the players or the owners?
It is the owners, and I'll tell you why. Because even if no games are played, the owners still make money, and I'll tell you why. The hat on your head and the hat on my head. The money goes to the team. Everybody like myself who has an MLB TV subscription, 2 weeks ago, the subscription's all renewed. It goes to the owners. Any merchandise that's not a player jersey or anything with a player's likeness on it, like if you just buy a Red Sox t-shirt, it goes to the owners. So, And you know who the real losers in this entire situation are? It's not the players or the owners. The players do lose, but the real losers are you and myself, the sports fans, the sports media, the people that work in the stadiums, and even like the guy who has a bar across the around the corner and across the street from the stadium, who relies on everybody who wants to get drunk before they go to the game to come to his establishment. So we're all the losers. Because at the end of the day, the owners always win. I do feel for the players in certain situations, like service time is very important. Actually, and this is one good thing about the Mets, despite all the mess that we have. In 2019, when he was a minor league invitee to spring training, Pete Alonso made the opening day roster. And everybody looked at the Mets and like, what are you doing? You can manipulate his service time if you keep him down for the first 2 weeks. That's what the Cubs did to Chris Bryant when he got called up, if you remember. And that was a whole big snafu. They kept him down the first 2 weeks in AAA and then brought him up when he was good enough to be on opening day roster. So service time is an issue. I know Fernando Tatis was an outspoken opponent of international players being drafted, only because those guys, they come from such treacherous conditions in their countries that they can't get signing bonuses, as big of a signing bonus if they're drafted as opposed to being an international free agent. The rule changes. I love that 9-inning doubleheaders are back, real baseball instead of 7 innings. I love the fact that there's no man on second base to start extra innings. Anybody who plays MLB The Show will know how much of a pain that is. And then the only thing I hate is that DH is in the National League, but what can you do? But I feel like the players, their concerns were warranted. A lot of people, and I've talked to a lot of people throughout the lockout, and they said, oh, they should just shut up and just agree to the terms so they can play. But it's not about that, because the players, in the long run, the players make the owners money. You can't tell me that. You can't tell me that Francisco Lindor and Pete Alonso don't make Steve Cohen money. You can't tell me that Mike Trout doesn't make the Angels owner money. Like right. These guys have rights too. They're and it's not just baseball, but I've heard shut up and dribble as for basketball players. Like it's these guys have rights. They have families, so they have a right to have a union and a negotiation. But I'm just disgusted with Manfred and the owners, especially the Colorado Rockies owner was the worst one.
Yeah, absolutely. And to go back to one of your points, like you talked about the players being able to kind of firmly establish themselves, in opposition to the owners. And I think that also it's not just about the here and now, but it's also for, labor negotiations down the road. Once this comes about again, like you've got to find a way to get an upper hand on them. So it goes back to, I remember during the Last Dance documentary for the 90s Chicago Bulls. And was it Jerry Krause, the general manager, said organizations win championships. And Michael Jordan said, look, we needed the organizations to put these teams together, but ultimately we had to go out and do it. Yep. We made Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause the money that they made, and obviously the Bulls to the brand that it is continued to be today. And so the same thing goes for Major League Baseball. And it goes back to something that I also talked about on Monday's show, that, and I hate to sort of bring up a sore subject because it's a rival team, but the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series should have been a 10 times bigger story than it was. But It was like the third biggest, it was like the third topic on most television and radio shows, and then nobody talked about it outside of the state of Georgia. And so the popularity of this sport is plummeting. And one last point I'll make about the marketing of players. Think about what Major League Baseball could do to market a guy like Shohei Ohtani, a two-way player, an MVP who's an ace and hits for power. You're talking about a guy who's obviously from overseas, comes to the United States with the Los Angeles Angels, along with Mike Trout. And last point, and I promise I'll give you the floor again. Mike Trout, the best player in Major League Baseball, has less followers on social media than Tyler Hero. I saw your eyes.
That's accurate?
That's accurate. You can go check it right now.
Tyler Hero that plays for the Miami Heat.
Tyler Hero that plays for the Miami Heat. I'm going to go and pull it up again, see if I can make sure I get those numbers correct. But last I read, yes, he does have, let's see, Mike Trout has 1.9 million followers on Instagram, and No Limit Hero on Instagram, if I can pull it up. Yep, he's got 2.3 million followers.
And Mike Trout is the best baseball player going right now.
And Tyler Hero is probably a top 40 player.
And Mike Trout is the number one, or arguably number one or top 3.
That's what I'm saying. It's the fact that baseball has done such a poor job. They don't embrace social media at all. I mean, think about, House of Highlights, for example, like the really popular social media page on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Think about like the home run derby, for example. That should be House of Highlights, Sports Center heaven. Is baseball in June, July, and even moving forward, sort of capitalizing off of that midsummer momentum into September. Yes, we get that football, NFL, college football comes into the fray, but September, you're talking about division chases, and then you get to October, and then it's just madness. Like that's where Major League Baseball, that's where Commissioner Manfred has failed so bad. And I was talking to my buddy Barry Grant Jr., our guy Barry Grant Jr. Shout out to him. We were talking about this last week, and he made the point that the last time that baseball it felt like was nationally relevant was when the Cubs won the World Series. Since then, it feels like it's just kind of plummeted.
Yeah, and I agree. And I actually had this conversation with him a couple days ago, and I tried to argue with him like, no, baseball's not declining because again, I'm in Citi Field 41 games a year. That's a significant out of the 81 home games. I'm there for half, so that's a significant amount of time. And I look around Citi Field and it's hardly ever empty. But then he was like, well, New York is a major market. He was like, if you sat in Kansas City at Kauffman Stadium, would the stadium be at capacity? Or if you were a Detroit Tigers fan or a Diamondbacks fan, and I had to sit there and think about it, and I said, no, you're right. But I got to say something about this whole situation. Rob Manfred, we got to get this guy out of here. I don't know if you heard his comments. He referred to the World Series trophy as a piece of metal. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, so that's what you think of the trophy that the champions get? Like, it doesn't mean anything to you? Like, I feel like he doesn't care about the game. He cares about the money. Because not for nothing, and maybe I could be wrong in saying this, but I feel because of the contracts they're able to give to players, baseball has the most money to give around.
Yes, absolutely.
The NFL or the NBA. So, I feel like he's in the seat for the wrong reasons. He's just there to make money. I don't think he cares about the game of baseball. And I feel like in that first press conference when they announced that they were postponing the season, he didn't even seem sincere. And he seemed annoyed when he was fielding questions from those reporters.
Yeah. No, he did. I mean, that's that's a criticism, and it's just crazy. Like you brought up the point about money, and kind of the harsh irony of it is that if Rob Manfred sort of did embrace the game of baseball, did really care about the sport, he'd make more money.
Yeah, and that goes back to my point. Look at Bud. For people who don't know, Bud Selig, who was the previous commissioner prior to Manfred, he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame, not as being a baseball commissioner, but for what he's done for the game. People can say what they want about Sosa and McGuire, but under Bud Selig's watch, the game skyrocketed back into popularity. That was number one. Bud Selig is the reason there's baseball in Seattle and Milwaukee. If you go back and do your research on the history of the Seattle Pilots, Seattle Mariners, and Milwaukee Brewers. So, Bud Selig grew the game. He grew the game. And I don't know, Manfred, he just seems so foul, so insincere. And even though there is going to be a full 162 game season, even myself, I'm a bit rubbed the wrong way. Because you don't see these problems in the NBA. Yes, the NBA had their lockout and they only played 54 games back in the 2011-2012 season. NFL never had a lockout. Matter of fact, the NFL, they did a better thing. They extended the season 1 week, much to the chagrin of the players. But still, they gave us an extra regular season game. The NHL, they had their lockout in 2005, but, the NHL's popularity seems to be booming now that they're back on ESPN. And they're on TNT. They're on every network imaginable. But baseball, it's crazy. And furthermore, you want to talk about ad revenue? Like, this is how you can tell that their revenue is their hold on America in general is slipping. If you notice, Bryson, Major League Baseball 20 years ago, every Saturday on Fox used to have doubleheaders. Now, the only time they're on regular terrestrial television and they're on Fox is when the World Series and the All-Star game. Every other time they're on TV, it's your local coverage, and you need a cable channel 9 times out of 10 to watch them. So yeah, it's bad, and I don't know. I don't have the answer as to what baseball can do to restore their image, but there have been so many people that I've spoken to, and they've all said the same thing. Yeah, man, like, because look at the time of year we're in. NBA season's winding down. Each team has maybe 15 games or less.
Yeah.
March Madness is tournament time right now. In another month, if baseball wasn't here, we wouldn't have anything to watch.
No, I mean, we'd have the NBA playoffs, but
the NBA playoffs, yeah, but outside of the NBA playoffs and maybe a NASCAR race once every couple of weekends, there's nothing to watch. So
absolutely, and to your point, you brought up earlier about how baseball, the Players Association, the owners have more of an issue on negotiating terms for a condensed season more than any other sport. Now, the NFL didn't have to do; they still played the 16-game year, but they didn't have until September to get theirs in place. The NBA, comes out and said, "Okay, we're just going to play, 8 games and then the playoffs in an empty gym in Disney World." They said, "We're going to make something work,"
and it worked.
And it works. Like, right, the games were played. I believe there wasn't a single player that tested positive for COVID in that time. Like the NBA, Adam Silver hit a home run. Michelle Roberts, they did a great job. And so, I mean, that's the issue for baseball. One suggestion I would have is where they would gain a ton of support, make one move. Let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. And
that'll change it.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned Pete Rose because the NFL just slammed Calvin Ridley for the same thing. But the thing is, Pete Rose, and they've proven which games he bet on, and it's a proven fact that the only games he bet on were the games that his team played, and he always bet for his team to win. He never bet against his own team, so it's not like the 1918 Chicago White Sox where they were throwing games.
Yeah,
it's he was betting on himself. I don't think there's anything wrong with you betting on yourself. There's more motivation for you to play the game. So, and then also, I don't think anybody's going to get over 4,000 hits for their career. I will say this though, as being objective. I know I vilified the owners. There's only one situation I sided with the owners on, and that's when they did not want the salary cap or the luxury tax. I firmly believe that, and I've always felt this way about every sport. If your team is making a certain amount of profit and revenue, you should be able to put that money towards player payroll. So
yeah, I agree with that. No, I agree with
that. But the argument from the players is, there's only 3 big money teams in the league: Yankees, Mets, Dodgers. And then I sat there and thought about it, and I'm like, baseball does have more small market teams than anywhere else. The Seattle Mariners, the Kansas City Royals, and the Miami Marlins, and Tampa Bay Rays, and I can go on and on and on. But if you look at the list of World Series champions the last 10 years, a good majority of them are small market teams. The Kansas City Royals beat my Mets.
Yeah.
So what does that tell you? You could have Steve Cohen is the richest owner in all of sports. Team didn't even make the playoffs last season. So
that's it.
I feel like small market teams, the Marlins have the lowest budget in history, and they won twice.
Exactly.
They have more World Series titles than some other organizations out there. So,
yeah, I believe up until last year they hadn't lost a playoff series in their history. Now, obviously, they had very limited appearances and they haven't been around for too long. But I think it just goes back to the fact that you talked about hockey as well, the NHL, and notice the lockout happened in 2005. It's not until recently that they've started to slowly gain back the popularity that they had lost, and so I think baseball is going to have to go through kind of the same thing. I really do. I think you're going to have to market your product in a way, like, for example, like the Field of Dreams game. I think they did make the attempt, like the Field of Dreams game, this past July.
I actually enjoyed that game.
I did too. Much. Yeah, it was a great game. Ended on a walk-off. It was unbelievable. The pleasantries of Kevin Costner was there, and it was in the cornfield. It was great.
In the same location, they filmed the movie and everything.
Yes, exactly. They had the Red Sox and Yankees play in London a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And so there are ways like that. For example, there's 162 games. You can fill in a little special game here and there for your big markets and for your smaller markets. And so I think that embracing social media, stop being so rigid on the Hall of Fame stuff. And I think you could be at a good place as a league. And, until they do that, we're probably going to be back in the same boat, in years' time.
It goes back to what you said the last time that I was here on the show. Baseball is just too high on themselves, and the Hall of Fame situation. If you don't make it after a certain point, you're off the ballot and you never get in unless it's by some special committee that you have to file an application for. You said they don't embrace social media, which is also very correct. It's crazy because, and see, this is why I appreciate Steve Cohen as the owner of the Mets. He listened to the people. You know, they have things for the fans. Like the Mets are doing an Old Timers Day this year for the first time since 1994. They're going to have a home team and away team of all Mets alumni players. I have never seen in Citi Field since the place opened. So I think things like that make the game special. And, you know, baseball used to be, and I'll even go and say this, baseball, because I go to all sports for ticket wise, except for football. I don't pay for football because I work for the Jets. But even before then, when I did go and buy tickets, baseball is the most affordable ticket. You can get into a Mets game the cheapest, $11. I mean, granted, you'll be sitting all the way at the top, but you'll still get in. But baseball, I always envisioned as a family sport. You know, football, you go with your buddies, you get drunk, you eat nachos, you act stupid in the parking lot. Basketball, you know, you hang out with your friends, but I feel like baseball is the family sport. You know, you take your girlfriend, take your wife, take the kids, have a hot dog, enjoy the game. Like, I feel like that's the true family sport out of the three. So when you turn away the families, you're not just losing one piece of revenue, you're losing four. Because when you go to a game, everybody's got to eat. Kids are going to want stuff. You may want something. I find it very tempting to walk out of Citi Field without any merch whatsoever. So,
Absolutely.
you know, so the owners were only doing themselves harm. But again, these guys are millionaires and some of them are billionaires. So I guess they didn't care. You know what I think the strategy was? The players will cave eventually. I think that's what their mindset was. Because the players, there's a lockout, they don't get any money. So, you know, and then there was talk. I don't know if you heard, but guys like Bryce Harper were considering trying to get a job in the KBO to play this season.
I did not see that. See that. And this is a guy that just won the MVP of the National League.
Yeah, he had wrote on Twitter that he would like to play for the KBO if there was no MLB season this year. Pujols was getting ready to play in the Dominican League. So, which he had been doing to stay in shape, but now he would have done it to play a season. So, you know, it was a whole, like the players ultimately, outside of the fans and stuff, they would have gotten hit hard. And I'm glad the two sides just were able to come together. Now, the real question is the first 2 weeks of the season are gone. So they said they're going to make them up with double headers. So now the question is, are guys going to get hurt? Managers are going to have to be strategic this first couple of weeks of the season, because you know you got to make up for that lost ground. Right. So a lot remains to be seen, but I'm more than happy baseball is back.
Absolutely, man. That's I guess when it's all said and done, that's all that matters. Baseball's back. It'll return right around Jackie Robinson Day. So, and honestly, I said this on the show yesterday. I think that factored in a little bit. You know, how bad of a look would it have been for Major League Baseball to miss the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier? It'd have been a horrible look.
Not only that, but Jackie Robinson Day is so significant that even when the 2020 season came about, because remember, 2020 started in July, they rescheduled Jackie Robinson Day into that 2020 season. Mm-hmm. So you can't cancel Jackie Robinson Day. That would have been blasphemy.
Oh, yeah, it'd have been awful. But baseball's back. We got 162 games. We got some rule changes. It's kind of going back to the way it was pre-2020. But listen, look forward to having you on the show throughout this 2022 season. Wasn't sure I was going to be able to say that, but Metropolitan Report hopefully coming up soon. And before you go, listen, let the people know where they can check out your show.
We're on Instagram at _Metropolitan_report. Same thing for Facebook. And do you mind if I make an announcement, show related?
Have at it. Floor's yours.
So we'll be back. Our first episode, because you know, spring training they're gonna break camp on Sunday. So everybody reports Sunday. I'm gonna have my first show on Tuesday, and I've got giveaways. Giving away 3 things. So number 1, got a box of baseball cards here. Number 2, game used ball. Michael Conforto actually hit this one into the stands. I caught it last year, and it got here. Jacob deGrom away road jersey. So just stay tuned to the Instagram, and I can tell everybody how they can win this stuff that I'm trying to give away.
That's what I'm talking about, my man. Hey, listen, appreciate you on the having you on the show, and listen, everybody watching and listening, be sure to apply for these giveaways. And Metropolitan Report is coming back soon, so appreciate you coming on, bro.
All right, thank you, bro. I'm more than happy to be here, and I'm sure I'll check in with you throughout the baseball season.
Yes, sir. That was Alfred Parsard Jr. of the Metropolitan Report joining Carving Up Live, and man, it's great to have baseball back. It's great, and obviously that's dope though. The giveaway thing he's doing that's awesome. John says I want one of your tickets. LOL. Yeah, that's of course the Yankees and Mets played the Subway Series last year, so you won't be getting in to see your Yankees, John. But hey, listen, you know he made a good point though. Like, you know, baseball is a sport that, you know, is kind of more of a family sport. I think a lot of that is because of the fact that, you know, it is the summer. You know, kids aren't in school, so it's easier to be able to schedule that around, you know, the parents or, you know, the guardian's work to be able to go to the game. And it is a great experience. There's no question about it. You know, Alfred and anybody who's ever gone to a Major League Baseball game can attest to that. And it's great to have baseball back. Grady says the MLB has a very Pharisee-like approach from the Bible. Too high and mighty, unwilling to show forgiveness to former players for past mistakes and to show grace, love to players in general in the sport. Amen, brother. Amen. That's what I've been saying, though. I think you're right on the money, Grady, because, you know, the steroid thing, the Pete Rose, which is the biggest atrocity in Major League Baseball, the fact that the man who has over 4,000 hits is not in the Hall of Fame is, I mean, you know, multi-time World Series champion, all the All-Star games, all the accomplishments. And, you know, at the end of the day, the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame is a museum. Just like the Pro Football Hall of Fame, just like the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame is, it's a museum. You're telling the story of the game. So, but yeah, Alfred Parsard Jr., appreciate him coming on the show. And his Mets should be good this year. Max Scherzer, a number of other free agent acquisitions. I think the Mets will absolutely contend for, if not a wild card spot, maybe they could threaten the Braves for that NL East if Freddie Freeman leaves the Atlanta Braves. That's kind of up in the air right now. The reports I'm reading is it's kind of 50-50 between the Braves and the Yankees. I'm really crossing my fingers he stays with Atlanta because I do not want that guy to go to my division rival, New York Yankees, because any failure the Yankees or their organization has is a win for me and a win for the Boston Red Sox. But moving on now, let's talk about some basketball. Last night was listen, man, I love the NBA. It is nothing short of storylines. And last night was kind of the game that everybody had been looking forward to. The Philadelphia 76ers hosting the Brooklyn Nets. And obviously, Ben Simmons was not available. It would have been that much more dramatic had he played. But again, he has yet to suit up as a Brooklyn Net. He has yet to suit up this NBA season with, you know, barely a month to go until the playoffs. So, but the Nets, simply put, came in and kicked the Brooklyn Nets behind. A 29-point win. Kevin Durant was Kevin Durant. Kyrie Irving was Kyrie Irving. And Seth Curry was great as well. They got some help off the bench as well. They had a guy in obviously Johnson scoring 16 points. Goran Dragic was in double figures off the bench. He's been a good addition for the team. You had guys like obviously Andre Drummond, who took it personally against Joel Embiid. And for the Nets quickly, I mean, this is what they are at their peak. And the one thing I will say about Brooklyn, I was really impressed with the defense they played in this game because Embiid got to the line a lot. I believe 19 times in the first half and didn't get to the line the rest of the game. The majority of Joel Embiid's points came at the free throw line. But the rest of the game, he was 5 for 17. So it was an inefficient night for Joel Embiid. Yes, he did score 27 points, but, you know, took 5 for 17 shots and went 15 for 19 from the line and 2 for 3 from three-point range. But to me, the main story in this game isn't Kevin Durant or Kyrie, and they were phenomenal. Unguardable last night. So it's probably arguably the best offensive duo in basketball. The story is James Harden. This is not an I told you so moment for me. This is a he told you so. His actions told you so. He's never said I'm bad in big games. His actions tell you that. Actions speak louder than words, as the old saying goes. And with the whole NBA world watching, it's on TNT. You got the crew, EJ, Kenny, Shaq, Chuck, the great Kevin Harlan calling the game, the great Reggie Miller, who James Harden actually passed last night in made three-pointers. So now James Harden is third all-time in three-pointers made behind Ray Allen and a distant third behind Steph Curry. But, you know, and Grady says down here in the comments, he says, we know the Nets can do this, but the Nets should come talk to us when Kyrie can play every game. And I assume the reports we're hearing is that the vaccine mandate could be lifted. I'll say this one thing. My issue with the whole mandate and everything, and they've lifted it to a certain degree, is that Kyrie Irving can go to the Barclays Center, but he can't play. Like that doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. And that's the biggest flaw in the rule, is that road players who may be unvaccinated can play at Barclays, but Kyrie can't. But Kyrie actually can show up to the arena, but he still can't play. Not sure what's going on there. Student of the game 225, he's back in the comments. He says Brooklyn fully healthy is dangerous. That 11-game losing streak was without any star power. And he says visiting players don't need to be vaccinated to play, which is bogus. Yeah. That's it's cuckoo. I think the mandate's going to be lifted soon. Kyrie should be able to play home games, but Ernie Johnson pointed out last night, I never thought about this. If you look at the Eastern Conference standings for the Nets, if the standings stay as they're where they are, Kyrie Irving can't play in the play-in. He can't play in the play-in tournament. Why is that? Because if it stands where it's at now, the Brooklyn Nets would play a play-in game against the Toronto Raptors in Toronto, where there's an even harsher vaccine mandate up in Canada. So Kyrie can't play that game. Let's say the Nets lose. So then they'll host the winner of the Hornets, and I believe in the standings it's Atlanta at the 10 seed. As it stands right now, Kyrie can't play that game either. So he'll not be available. But they need him in order to win a championship. But it's always been my question, not just the vaccine stuff, but injuries, randomly taking games off. It's always been my criticism and my concern for Kyrie Irving and for the Brooklyn Nets. But they were great last night. We know when Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the floor together, we know what they can do. Okay? Kyrie's the best ball handler I've ever seen in my life. Over Allen Iverson, Steph Curry, Jamal Crawford. Throw out anybody. Okay? Kyrie's got them beat. And Kevin Durant is the greatest, the most gifted scorer, I should say, that I've ever seen. He can literally do it all. But again, the bigger story is for James Harden. We know what he is in big games. Yes, it's not a playoff game, but again, the whole NBA world was watching. James Harden knew what this game represented. This wasn't some random game against Orlando. This is against your old team, a team of which you were a part of just a month ago, a team of which you forced yourself out. And so, the fact that he had this opportunity to prove his old team wrong. In a big game, James Harden had a chance to not redeem his playoff failures entirely, but he could say, hey, this is a new me. This is a new James Harden. I got Joel Embiid. I've got the supporting cast. I'm at home. The home fans are booing their old player in Ben Simmons, who's on the bench. James Harden last night, 3 for 17, did not make a single 2-point shot, 11 points. Sixers fans, get used to this. This is what you're going to be seeing in April, and if you get to May, what you'll see in that month. James Harden's one of the greatest scorers the game's ever seen. He's one of the greatest distributors currently in the NBA. I said when the trade happened, the fit between Harden and Embiid was perfect. And we've seen that at times in the games that they have played this season since the trade went down. But when it's all said and done, when you really, really need a bucket from James Harden, when you need him to set the tone, he's not there. I'm not going to go over the long list of playoff failures. This is who he is. The Maya Angelou quote, as it goes. When somebody shows you who they are, believe them. That's who James Harden is. This is what should concern Sixers fans moving forward. This is what James Harden does in the playoffs. Big game on TNT. Everybody's watching. You're at home against your old teammates. Now, reportedly, there's no animosity between James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving. I've read that, I've read that James had some animosity towards Kyrie. Who knows? But that's the team he forced his way out of. You got to back it up, man. You force your way out of Brooklyn. You got to back it up in Philly. It's easy to play as well as you do when there's no pressure and you're playing the New York Knicks. So, Sixers fans, get used to this. That's all I'll say. Got quite a few comments here. Let's see if I can go back to the top where they started. Okay. Stu at the game 225 says the Nets acquiring James Harden backfired big time. He's a cancer. 2 consecutive seasons, he cried and moaned his way out of the city. He did. I'm not always against a player forcing their way out of a certain situation, like Deshaun Watson forcing his way out of Houston. I get it. Okay, the Houston Texans, by the way. Houston's a horribly ran franchise. I don't blame James Harden forcing his way out of the Rockets last year. They weren't ready to win any championships. He's a great player in his prime. He wants to go win. I get that. I'm fine with that. But the way he went about it, taking shots at teammates, his new coach, the organization as a whole, putting on weight just to get traded. It's like, come on, man. The way he went about this trade, same scenario. Goes to teammates. So, yeah, it's that's what he does. Grady talks about the vaccine mandate. He says, I agree, such a stupid rule, but still, man, it's the rule, unfortunately. I do acknowledge I'm a little harder on him because he doesn't show up to work. He plays when he wants to. That's where my outrage really comes from on him. I dislike guys to get paid all this money to play a child's game and they don't show up for the fans. He's cheated us. Guys like LeBron, Kobe, Jordan, D-Wade, Dirk, can't say that about them. They never cheated us. Yeah, and that's where a lot of the praise for Giannis has come from. Like, I think I would put Giannis in that group. Giannis gives everything he has, game in and game out. You can't say that about James Harden. You can't. I'm not saying he's got bad effort, but he's never been a good defensive player. And again, the biggest of the games, he don't show up. But you were talking about Kyrie, my bad. You were talking about Kyrie Irving. I was talking about James Harden. That's my bad. But, with Kyrie, yeah, it's kind of the same thing as, again, some of it's out of control with the injury, out of his control with injuries. But obviously, look, if he gets vaccinated, there's no issue. And also the fact that he does skip games. He did skip what was it, 8 games last year from about early January to early to mid-February. Just out of nowhere, he's gone. Like, wait, where'd Kyrie go? So I don't think either of these teams are getting to the finals. I think I've been consistent on this. Milwaukee, the defending NBA champions, they're going to the finals, and they're going to play the team that they're playing tomorrow night, and that is my Golden State Warriors. That's a must-watch game on ABC tomorrow night. Bucks, Warriors. Obviously, I'm going to be watching. Of course, I watch every ABC Saturday night game. This one will be no different. But, I think tomorrow night's the finals preview. But speaking of the team that I think the Bucks will play in the finals, that's my Golden State Warriors. Last night was huge because obviously you're still missing Draymond Green. He's going to be back on Monday. And I went on a big Warriors rant on my show on Monday after they lost to the lowly Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, LeBron scored 56, but you've got to win that game. We've seen the Lakers last 2 games losing to San Antonio, then losing to Houston, the worst team in the league. I mean, the Lakers are awful. But I went on a rant on the Warriors for that reason because I think the Lakers are a bad basketball team. And so it outraged me that the Warriors lost to the Lakers. And since then, they've won 2 straight games without Draymond Green. And obviously against the Clippers, they're playing a beat-up team, and they were able to get things done against LA. But you're playing a game last night against the Denver Nuggets on the road, a team that has, won 3 out of the first 3 games against you. You're down 14. And Mr. Wardell Stephen Curry II, the man I've called the baddest man in basketball, he took that game over. The Warriors' success starts and ends with Steph Curry. Now, I've been consistent on this. If they don't have Draymond, forget it. You're not winning a championship. If they don't have Clay, forget it. You're not winning a championship. You got to have both of those guys, obviously, along with Steph Curry. But when they really needed it, Steph went off. He started the game 2 for 9, and he finished the game 11 for 21, 5 for 12 from 3, 34 points to go along with 9 rebounds. And Klay Thompson himself, I thought, was really good. Obviously the shooting percentages aren't great, but defensively, was good against the likes of the Denver guards. And Jordan Poole was outstanding with 21 points and hit 2 dagger threes in the last minute. And I think Steph yet again showed he should have been MVP over Nikola Jokic last year. But that's neither here nor there. Student of the game 225 says Golden State worries me because Clay and Steph are shooting career lows together. I'd be concerned. They are. They've showed that on TNT the last 2 games. That again, like you said, both Steph and Clay are shooting a career low from the field and a career low from 3. So you're going to have to be more efficient in the playoffs. But I think what it comes down to is Golden State will win their first series, whoever it's against. If it's against Minnesota, though Minnesota's playing good basketball right now. Credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They are balling out right now. I think they've got the best record in the NBA since the All-Star break. But they can beat Minnesota in probably 5 games. Do they match up against Denver? Possibly. They'll face Memphis in the second round. And while Ja Morant scares me, the rest of the Grizzlies really don't. So they should take care of Memphis in no more than 6 games. It comes down to them playing Phoenix. It comes down to Phoenix. And obviously Dallas, I said last week, I think they're a title contender. They got blown up by the Knicks the other night. But I think that with Luka, the great defense they're playing, Spencer Dinwiddie, I think they're going to be a team that's going to be a threat, moving forward in the Western Conference. But to me, if you had to give me 2 teams, it's Phoenix and Golden State. And look, how's Chris Paul going to be when he comes back from that hand injury? He tends to get hurt this time of year. I love Chris Paul. He's one of my favorite players, but he does tend to get hurt this time of year. And so, that's something that you got to take into consideration. And obviously Phoenix has dealt with some injuries this year as well. Home court advantage is going to matter. That's going to go in favor of the Suns. But I think that'd be a fun Western Conference Finals. I said before the season, Suns are going to be the 1 seed. Golden State's going to be the 2 seed. They'll match up in the conference finals. And I had my Warriors winning in 7 games. I think it'll be a drag out series. And I think Golden State will ultimately prevail because I trust Steph, Clay, and Draymond more than I trust Chris Paul, Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton, as good as that trio is. Grady asked a football question. What's your hot take on this? Percentage Tom Brady is the opening day starter for the San Francisco 49ers next year? 0. I don't think it's happening. I think Tom Brady's retired. I don't think he goes back to San Francisco. He's certainly not coming back to Tampa Bay. We've heard what the reports have been on his relationship with Bruce Arians and how he got frustrated with the Bucs front office at times and sort of the loose culture that they have in Tampa with the Bucs. And so, but I don't think he's playing for the 49ers next season. Do I think I said this when Tom Brady retired in I guess it was early February when the news came out. I said, look, for Tom, it's going to be the toughest football season of Tom Brady's life because he's not playing. He's going to be watching these games. And Tom, mostly, not entirely, but mostly correctly, is going to be watching some of these quarterbacks in particular and be like, I'm better than him. I'm better than him. I could have made that throw. Hey, bad read there. I wouldn't have thrown that pick. So I think that's going to get to Tom a little bit. But I don't think he's going to be starting in San Francisco next year. Back to the Warriors. Stu the game 225 says the emergence of Wiggins as an all-star and the play of Jonathan Kaminga and Jordan Poole has been great. Wiggins has struggled mightily offensively since the all-star break. He's been great on the defensive end of the floor, certainly on the perimeter. But Kaminga has been awesome. 6th overall pick in the draft out of the G League, and he's been averaging 15 points a game in the last month. So Jonathan Kaminga is 19 years old. He's still a teenager. He's just getting better and better. His shooting has gotten better. He's put the time in the gym. He works hard. He's in a great culture. Jonathan Kaminga is going to be a future all-star in this league. I don't think there's any doubt about it. And Jordan Poole, as you mentioned, I think he's a future all-star himself. He's got to get better defensively, but he can handle the basketball. He's an excellent three-point shooter, can get his own shot. And he gives the Warriors a dynamic force off the bench, sort of a poor man Steph Curry, really off the bench is Jordan Poole. So I think that's a great, great addition for Golden State. And obviously drafted in 2019, and he's developed incredibly well. Grady asks, do you see Andre Iguodala getting more minutes come postseason time? Well, first, Iguodala's got to get back from injury. Of the 4 injured Warriors currently, he's likely going to be the last one to come back because Draymond Green's going to be back on Monday. I assume Gary Payton II will be back soon as well. James Wiseman looked great in his first G League game. He's going to play one more G League game and then come back. But I mean, I think he'll get minutes. There's no question about it. He's one of the smartest players in the league. What is this for Andre? This is year 18, so he's been around the block in the NBA. He knows how it goes. So I think he will get minutes. I think because of the fact that I think still to this day he has the best defensive hands in basketball, and I think it'll work great for him. So he's an excellent player. He has been for the Warriors for years, and they'll need him, to try and go win a championship. Student of the game is talking about the Grizzlies. He says Desmond Bane is lethal. Don't sleep on the Grizzlies. I mean, here's the thing about Memphis. I'm not sleeping on the Grizzlies because I said before the season, I said, watch out for Memphis. Like they're going to make some noise. Like they could possibly win a playoff series. And John Morant, we know what he is. He's out of this world. Desmond Bane's really good. I think Memphis needs more pieces in order to elevate into a championship team. But the fact that, look, John Morant's first 3 years, his rookie year, they nearly make the playoffs. They probably do get in if Jaren Jackson doesn't get injured. Last year, they do make the playoffs. They beat the Spurs. They go on the road and beat my Warriors in the play-in game to get in the playoffs. And then this year, they have a 2 seed. They got the second best record in the NBA. I think as of right now, though, they're a regular season team. I think they will absolutely win a playoff series, but they need a few more pieces. They probably need another score, a legit 20-point per game score to go along with John Morant's because they're great defensively. Sort of a throwback in some ways of the grit and grind Memphis Grizzlies of Mike Conley and Zebo, Zach Randolph, and Mark Gasol and Tony Allen. I mean, that's those are some really good Grizzlies teams, but sort of a version of that. But John Morant's out of this world, and he can give any team fits. Grady asks, who's your most underrated NBA player? Mine is De'Aaron Fox. Get that guy out of Sacramento. Such a talent. I love De'Aaron Fox as well. Loved him out of Kentucky. And like you said, his talents are being wasted with the Sacramento Kings. Most underrated NBA player. That's a tough one. I would probably say most underrated NBA player. I think Zach Levine. I think Zach Levine's underrated. Like the guy is one of the more gifted scorers in the NBA. And obviously, thankfully for Zach, he's playing for an excellent Bulls team. Now they've kind of slid as of late, but Chicago's really beat up right now. So they need to get some of their guys back. But he's had an excellent season. I believe he was an all-star again. He was an all-star last year. He can still jump out the gym. I would say Zach Levine is the most underrated, my most underrated NBA player. Like I look at the guy's numbers, what he puts up every night, the kind of team guy he is. He's a great dude, great teammate, great player. I think he needs to get more respect than he's gotten. An argument could be made he should have been an all-star starter over Trae Young. Trae Young's having a great year, but you could argue Zach Levine should have been that spot. Grady says back to Memphis. Memphis should try to trade for Donovan Mitchell if he wants out of Utah. I feel like they could swing that with all the rotation pieces they have around John. I mean, Memphis definitely has the assets, and John Morant and Donovan Mitchell, that would make them a title contender. That would make them a title contender. You got 2 25-point per game scorers, 2 athletic guys. John needs to improve as a shooter. Donovan Mitchell's already a great shooter. And so, but to have that tandem together in the backcourt, that's the best. I love Steph and Clay. That's the best backcourt in the league, possibly, if that were to happen. So, but I don't think Donovan Mitchell is too happy in Utah right now. We've heard reports he's expressed some frustration. Is he one of these guys that possibly forces his way out? I don't think he's going to do it in the way that James Harden is. I've said for a year now, I think Damian Lillard needs to force his way out of Portland because Portland's well run. It's it's a good front office, and I think Chauncey Billups is a good coach, but Dame needs to get up out of there and play for a team that can contend. But Donovan Mitchell and John Morant, that would be some scary, scary stuff for the rest of the NBA. That would be fun. Last topic of the day. Let me discuss back to the NFL for a little bit. So I briefly kind of discussed the Khalil Mack trade from the Bears to the Chargers yesterday. And to me, what it does is it's yet another move. It's yet another trend. It's yet another piece of evidence that we have that if you want to do anything in terms of competing for championships in the NFL, you have to be aggressive. Do you need to build through the draft? Yeah, absolutely. The draft has its place. The Rams did draft Aaron Donald. And they did draft a guy in Cooper Kupp who was the Super Bowl MVP and the Offensive Player of the Year and the Triple Crown winner. They did draft some of these guys that were on this defense and offensively. They drafted Cam Akers. But they went out and got Matthew Stafford and Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. and Andrew Whitworth. Okay, and Eric Weddle and Jalen Ramsey. So what the Chargers are saying, they're like, look, we drafted our franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. We drafted our star left tackle in Rashawn Slater. We've got guys like Austin Eckler. We drafted Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. We locked Mike Williams up long term. And we drafted Joey Bosa, by the way. We need those extra pieces. We went out and got Casey Hayward a few years ago. Now we're bringing a guy to the division in Khalil Mack, who is a multi-time Pro Bowler, still one of the premier pass rushers in the NFL. And in a division, once again, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, and Derek Carr. You better get after the quarterback. Like Joey Bosa, obviously, we've seen that he can do that, but he's going to need some help. When I give him help the other end with Khalil Mack, you can't double either of them. So this is kind of a message, honestly, to the Cowboys. Whatever Bobby Wagner wants, Bobby Wagner gets if you're the Dallas Cowboys. The reports from Ed Werder of ESPN came out today that Dan Quinn has been campaigning hard for the Cowboys to go get Bobby Wagner. Obviously, as we all know, Dan Quinn was Seattle's defensive coordinator. Legion of Boom was there, obviously, and Bobby Wagner is still a top 5 linebacker in this league. If Dallas wants any shot at contending for a Super Bowl, they have to get Bobby Wagner. Have to. Because it's being reported they're probably going to end up keeping Amari Cooper and restructuring his contract. Now, see, if they restructure Amari's contract, I'm all for keeping him. Because my argument for Amari Cooper being cut by the Dallas Cowboys was his production was not matching his salary. He was not putting up the numbers that a $20 million receiver should put up. But if they restructure it down to $15 million, I'm good. Like that, absolutely you keep Amari Cooper. I would be more lenient on cutting DeMarcus Lawrence, but in the same breath, his production hasn't matched his salary. Bobby Wagner is still as productive as any player in this league. So for the Cowboys, you see all these moves going around, mostly in the AFC, but really in both conferences. You want to contend? Go get Bobby Wagner. The Chargers didn't necessarily need a pass rusher, but they said, you know what? 3 of the top 10 quarterbacks in football are in our division, arguably. I think Derek Carr's pushing to be a top 10. Certainly Justin Herbert's in there, and obviously I think Mahomes and Wilson are top 5 quarterbacks. We've got to make it as difficult on them as possible. So that's my takeaway, is you can't win in today's NFL without being aggressive. You got to be aggressive in today's league. You have to. Grady asks, random thought, do you think Jared Goff will be the Lions opening day starter next year? I think so, because look, obviously they won 3 games this year. They're at the top of the NFL draft, but I think that his numbers were decent. I think that he's getting paid a lot of money, and the Lions have a lot of cap space. So, is any other team going to take up that contract? I highly doubt it. So what he gets for the Lions is stability. He's a stable NFL starting quarterback. He has played in a Super Bowl. Clearly, as we saw with the Rams, he's not in the level of Matthew Stafford, but he's a starting quarterback in this league. What are the Lions? What are the Lions going to do? I've heard people argue like, what are the Colts going to do now if they trade Carson Wentz? What are the Lions going to do? At least the Colts are well run. Detroit's a mess. Like they kind of have to keep Jared Goff. They don't have any better options as it stands right now, because I don't think Deshaun Watson is going to be traded to the Detroit Lions. Excuse me, that would be the shock of the NFL without a question. But listen, about as crazy a week of sports as I can remember doing this show, honestly. I mean, just like in recap, you got the baseball lockout, you got Russell Wilson gets traded, Aaron Rodgers stays, Carson Wentz gets traded, Khalil Mack gets traded. You got the James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, drama. Ben Simmons comes back to Philadelphia. The Lakers still stink. I mean, it's crazy. It has been a crazy week. And it's only going to get crazier. Why is that? Because March Madness is back next week. Oh, let's go. My Tennessee Vols right now are beating Mississippi State. So I'm going to go and watch the rest of that game. Hopefully we can win this SEC tournament. I'm going to predict you right here, right now. We're going to be a number 2 seed in this tournament, and we're going to go to the Elite 8. Let's go Vols, GBO, go Big Orange. Let's take it on the road in this NCAA March Madness tournament. So until Monday, that is all the time the show we have for today. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up once again on Monday, as always, at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. You can also catch Carving It Up live on the Carving It Up podcast. We appreciate you listening there as well on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and on Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to catch Carving It Up also on social media, on Instagram at Carving It Up Podcast, Twitter at Carving It Up Pod, and on Facebook, search Bryson Carver, and the Carving Up logo should pull up right there on the search bar. So, and also on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. It helps the channel grow exponentially. So appreciate everybody showing up in the comments today. Big shout out to my man, Alfred Parsard Jr., discussing the baseball lockout, and be sure to check out his show. He's got a giveaway going on, folks. You got to go register to get involved in that. But great dude, great show, great baseball mind. Love having him on, and hope everybody has a great weekend. A lot of great basketball coming up. Baseball's back, and NFL free agency is coming up soon. Lord knows what we're going to have on Monday's show, but it's going to be crazy. That I do know. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. Let's go Vols. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.